So talking range training. Range training is the focus for today's call. Georgos is going to direct us so that we have a bit more of a specific focus within these conversations. The plan is that we roll this out as a series, and we're going to do the series live free, and then the range training offer product is also coming to the market pretty soon. So there'll be a really good deal for Uncommon Success guys. But yeah, the concept of range training is one that needs to get out to the world at some stage soon. So yeah, you're welcome to join on the other link as well, Maxime, if you want. Alyosha, Tennis, we're on the. You can watch on YouTube, or you can watch on StreamYard, or you can stay there as well if you want. All right. So we're that gym is that view is outstanding. Giorgo, the ultimate. Is it single car garage?
It is a basement room here.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So
a lot of
good temperature year round.
A lot of reps being made in there.
Yeah, definitely. Every day.
Very good. So what's our frame here for the call? And we can use the chat box there on the side as well for questions, discussions. Just put a comment first up in the YouTube as well, so we can see that any comment or conversation there will be kind of archived together with this call, which is cool. And then if you need to send anything privately, then you can use the private chat there. But yeah, open us up for today, Giorgo.
Yeah, so today we will be speaking about long and short range, and trying to stick to just the concepts of long and short range and the difference between them and how to apply them in the best way. If we jump right in, Keegan, or do you want to add something before, or should we start a discussion? How do you want to do this?
Yeah, I think the guys who are on are probably the ones who are pretty familiar with this, so it could be fun to throw to Joe, share his thoughts, experiences on the long short range straight up, and see where that brings the conversation.
Yeah, cool. Take over, Joe.
How are we, guys? Yeah, so kind of the long range, short range, I came across that through ATG well over a year ago now. I was always that injured guy within the teams. I could only ever play like once a week, maybe once a month on bad months, just because whether it was ankles, knees, hips, something was going wrong. And I got my certs in personal training and whatnot, doing everything by the book, everything that they said I should be doing, but I was still getting injured all the time. And I couldn't really understand why, whether it was I was lifting heavy and for weeks after I'd have a pain in my hip or my ankles weren't quite up to it. There was always something wrong. And then when I kind of came across ATG and building from the short range to the long range, within the first 2 months, my injuries were as good as gone. Like it was a year long of pain kind of run by in a couple months, and I was like, how is this making sense? So much has happened in such a short amount of time. And it was really just understanding how to implement short range movements and not always go into those long range, higher tension kind of movements that we see in the likes of CrossFit with your snatches and your max kind of reps, which is what I always like to do. Like, we all like to lift heavy, but you also have to understand there's another side of the coin there, and that's bringing in that short range stuff. I don't know if that resonated with anyone what I was saying, or is that just kind of talking to the open?
100%, man. It's pretty wild. Like I've for like 20 years, that I was always tendonitis somewhere. I think I had my first one at 10 years old, and I went to all kinds of therapists, and there was never anything like this concept expressed. It did kind of show up in different bits and pieces of protocols. Like I had shin splints for a long time because I ran a lot, and I was obviously too weak in the lower legs, and my bones weren't adapting, whatever was going on. And I did a protocol that had a lot of short range, both tibialis and calf soleus work, and it did help to overcome the shin splints, and my calves got bigger and stronger. But I got compartment syndrome straight away because I didn't understand about long range and I wasn't stretching out the fascia. And so then I had compartment syndrome for the next year or so, which is like, feels like your muscles are going to explode because the fascia is too small, for the muscle when it pumps. So it's crazy how much difference a simple concept can make. And then you feel as though you can handle a much higher amount of training volume, and you don't have the same fear of plyometrics and all those sorts of things as well. Once you actually get all of these, once you're familiar with the concepts, and it's like, it's too good to be true, but it's still the best kept secret in strength. Like still the vast majority of coaches would have no idea what you're talking about, what the concept is, why it might be effective. Like the dominant idea is still just that time under tension is what matters the most, that sets and reps, that volume per muscle group. Like this concept that stretch matters was actively pushed back against by a lot of the top minds in the industry just a few years ago. Now there's more research, like there's Schoenfeld research around the long range that's come out, and they're starting to realize that it's true and feel like they're inventing the idea. But Poliquin knew this from the perspective of muscle development from long ago, and it was in his programs, and he understood the difference between the different movements. What he never spoke about, and I guess I don't think he understood, was that it was the connective tissue element, because when the tendon and the fascia are also adapting with this, it's not just about being able to add more muscle size, it's about being able to create more connective tissue dominant muscles and a body that is more connective tissue dominant. And so you're effectively going back to what you were like as a child, where you could just wake up in the morning and jump off the table, and you didn't need to warm up, you didn't need to do anything. And we saw that with Ben at this event. Like he was literally like touching his, not literally, but almost touching his head to the roof in like a 15-foot ceiling roof, jumping off the reverse hyper. He did it cold. He did it for about 15 reps. So it's like world class as a parkour athlete. You wouldn't see an elite high jumper jumping into something like that. You wouldn't see, an elite sprinter jumping into something like that without warming up. And he's able to just do that. And that's like the result of putting this sort of work in over many years. He didn't do it thinking about long and short range. He wasn't thinking through that lens at all. He just knew that those exercises worked for legs. And so, I was trying to decode it because I also had issues with my triceps and issues with, if I did a lot of bench pressing, I'd have issues with the triceps. And turns out that it works at every joint, which is pretty amazing. The issue with the Nordics for me was I would blow the tendons up straight away. As soon as I would go hard on the Nordics, the tendons would blow up. Now I just did a lot of that long range work, especially like single leg Jefferson effectively and heavy Jeffersons. And then all of a sudden I can do Nordics without practicing any Nordics. Where I've been working on Nordics for 2 years, and it was literally just going super hard at the extreme long range. And then all of a sudden there's no tendon issue there anymore. So, it's hard to understate. Like it's so disappointing that still 5 years into this, most people have no idea about the concept. As much as knees over toes go is known, but this concept is still, you would go a long way before you meet a coach who can explain it or is applying it with their clients. So, I'd love to hear other guys' experiences around this. I think Giorgos having some technical difficulties, but
I'd love to share something about my experience as well.
Yep.
So I studied with Kelly Starrett and Jill Miller, and that's all about the myofascia and the fascia. And after my call with Giorgos and understanding the long range and short range way better, and after doing the ATG for coaches, the more and more I start to dive into that and understand how the short and long range really work, the more I can apply that to my clients. With the fascia, it's all that connective tissue, and that's really where the long range really comes in as well. And pumping that full with the short range, being aware of that difference made it so much clearer on how I could help my clients, and the more I can see like the work that I already did with massage balls and myofascial release, releasing those tissues, the next step would always be to strengthen those connective tissues, strengthen those tendons. And it's way easier now. I understand that there is a difference in the short and the long range on applying that in a program and to help people to really come back from their injuries and come back stronger than where they were before. And before I knew about short and long range, it was just kind of like, well, I think, this and that, and I'll just loosen up the tissues and then you go your game. But the next step would be to have your tendons get some input in the right way with short and long range. And now I kind of understand that concept. The more I get into that, the more it's clear to me that it makes so much sense to have that difference between the short and long range. It's finally like clicking, like, aha, that's how you should really apply it. So it's very interesting to see the correlation between the fascia work that I did and now applying the next step with the ATG and the long range and short range. You're a fair bit about fascia as well, Keegan. So it's very interesting to see how that's evolving as well in all the research that's coming out in the last few years.
Yeah, everyone's talking about it, and Kelly Starrett's been doing his things for 10 years, and it's good that everyone should express their truth, and then those truths should be challenged. Like Jordan Peterson talks about with everybody should write essays because then your best ideas come out. Well, the purpose of writing a book is to have people tell you what you missed. And Charles missed stuff, and Kelly Starrett is missing stuff with what they're talking about there. People have been doing this long range work and feeling young in gymnastics, in ballet, in even weightlifting. If you look at Klokov and Ehab and these guys, like it's been there, it's hidden in plain sight. But until you actually have it displayed to you, you just progress the tension. Like that's literally what you do. And it actually goes further than short and long range. And we're not going to get into that as much today, but the repetition style progression, which is basically puts parkour on the same spectrum as squatting, and it's all the same thing. It's just tension, and you just progress the style of tension from slow to fast, from heavy and short to long and fast, long and explosive. Like the hardest stuff is landing in extreme long ranges, like receiving extreme force quickly in those long positions. That's the ultimate level of bulletproofing. But yeah, this is the game. Is we've got this power, this ability to help other people get up to speed with something that that it's just such a great gift once you have this. And I think you're seeing that gratitude when people have their call with Giorgo. Like a lot of the concepts are explained there in the videos, but when you have someone explain it to you one-to-one when you're live and you're talking about your specific situation or a specific muscle group, tendon for you, like then it really starts to click. And so that is the opportunity for all of you guys as well, is to become fluent in this concept of range, become a range coach, and really take it to another level. And that's what Giorgo is doing. That it really is taking this knowledge to another level of detail, exercise selection. ATG's done a great job of making it really simple and accessible for people to use this for the knee particularly, but there are other issues. And so the sequence is important in other areas of the body as well. You don't need it until you need it. So if you don't have any hamstring tendon issues or you don't have any tricep tendon issues, then you can train however you want. But if you do have an issue with those tendons, then you're going to need this technique. So yeah, Giorgo, I'm not sure what you've heard there, but I'm sure you've got something to add.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I had some connection issues here. I had to change the phone. I lost a little bit of what you guys were saying, but I'm sure it was great stuff. And I got the last part you were saying here, Keegan. The key when it comes to range, I think a lot of people misunderstand how to train different ranges. They start by trying to see like what's the longest possible range and what's the shortest possible range, and they go from there. So when it comes to the shortest possible range, that is pretty fine, because you cannot go so much wrong there. You're pretty safe in the short ranges, especially if the tension is in the short range. But when it comes to long range, when people ask me, what's the longest range I can do, I like, it's not a complete comparison, but I like to compare it with somebody asking me what's the heaviest weight I can squat. Well, that is up to your capacity. You shouldn't look at somebody squatting 300 kilos and think, okay, yeah, that's maybe the or say 500 plus deadlift. That's the most anybody has lifted, right? So that's the heaviest weight you can go to, possibly, as we know from what we know. But you would never go to a 500 kilo when you're starting. So the same applies to range. You should start with a range that is feeling natural and comfortable, and the joint is moving smoothly, and the muscles are working in a good way. And then you can start progressing that range. So one thing that is important to understand is that when you were training the joint in a specific angle, we become stronger in that angle, but not only in that angle. So we will also become stronger 5 to 10 degrees outside of that angle in both directions. So we don't need to push ourselves to really the longest range possible that we have seen somebody else do. We just need to push ourselves to the range that we feel comfortable in, and we will actually gain some strength and some ability in progressively in the longer range, because we're gaining in those in 5 to 10 degrees outside of the angle we're actually training. So the next time we could go into a bit of longer range. So that is the way you should think about when you're finding which is the long range for you, is what is your ability right now, and what will help you to get into longer and longer ranges as you progress. Do we have agreement on that, guys, or any or does it sound strange?
Yeah, there definitely are times where you can't use the full long range, even though that might be the best remodeling exercise, to go into that extreme long range. But if the tissue's been damaged, then any amount of load, and even if you're not using external load, that doesn't mean there's no load. The idea of external and internal loading is an important one with this as well. Like, you have to consider the internal load, or the load of the body, as well as anything external that you add. If you're doing single leg Jefferson curls, for example, like, there's a lot of load on the hamstring, even though you're not holding any weight if you're in that extreme long range position. Even with the arms, if you're doing like the Smith curls and you're laying down on the bench, you'll see very strong athletes who 2 to 3 kilos, like the weight of the arms is already enough that they feel as though this is a lot. I'm screaming at 3 kilos or 5 kilos on a Smith curl, when they can curl like 30, 40 kilo dumbbells. You will see that as well. So yeah, the longest range is not always the best range, and the sequencing is really, for me, is the magic, and recognizing, okay, that's enough, that's long enough for now, is sort of the key. Maybe we can touch on pain there. What do you do if you are getting pain, and what are the options around that?
Yeah, so the way I work when it comes to pain, I think we should try to stay out of pain completely. I see pain as, actually, we should think about it as, when we're feeling pain, we're creating some kind of damage, even if it's minimal. Sometimes we can get away with that, because what we are doing is having so much beneficial effects that it's overcoming the negative effects. But I really like to stay out of pain. And then we have some tools. So as we were talking before, maybe you will not need to go to the longest range. You can get around that if you're really lightening the tension in the longest range. So Ben Patrick has shown this great with the split squat, right? You use assistance, so you can still get into that long range, but you are decreasing the tension a lot. You're decreasing the weight you are actually putting in that range. So we can decrease the range and keep it in a pain-free range. We can decrease the tension so that we can get into the long range pain-free. And we can regress the speed in which we are moving, which will also allow us to more safely get into longer ranges and also feel it out, instead of going down and feeling the pain and then creating the damage. Another aspect is also that we will when we're slowing down the eccentrics, we will be building up the tissues in a much safer way if we are not used to it, and usually be able to stay out of pain also more. So that's how I see pain, and we need to regress any exercise so we are pain-free, and we can keep progressing that as we go.
There's a good question there from Jacob. We put that on the YouTube as well. If you can put it on the post it to the YouTube, that would be better. But asking about, is pain, what's pain that's injury related, and what's pain that's just, okay, this is stretching me a lot. There's the sensation of, wow, like this is putting my body into a new place it hasn't been in before. All sorts of alarm bells are going off. You want to discuss, like, what are you talking about when you say pain, when you're talking about long range? What are the ways to sort of identify whether it's a kind of good pain or bad pain, or is any kind of stretching pain a bad thing?
No, it is not. It is something that you need to start it's something you understand the more you do this kind of exercises. You start finding the sweet spot, which really so there is a distinction between tension and feeling pain. You should be able to get into some tension, but at some point. So this is very subjective, and it's hard to explain to somebody. It's very felt. When you do it, you feel it, and then you get it. So the way really to judge this, in my opinion, would be to so say you are going into a stretch position, you're feeling the stretch, and you're now you don't know, am I doing the right thing? Am I feeling pain, or am I feeling stretch here? So what will tell you if this was beneficial will be the results of this stimulus that you put in. So if you're feeling good 1 to 6 hours later in the evening time, then probably it was okay. And if you're feeling good the day after, then it definitely was okay. So then you can start finding how far can I go. If you go too far, you will notice that you will have more domes. You will maybe be unsure of your tissues later in the evening, and the next day you will have actually you will be worse off than you were the day before. So that would be how you start to find your own subjective feeling of where how far can you go with this tension stuff before it becomes pain. It's very hard to talk about because we all have different pain thresholds also as well. So we need to start experiment a little bit with our own bodies and find what is the sweet spot to get to. It's very hard for somebody else to tell you. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, for sure. I also experienced some of this using the HEG split squat. So I was really trying to push it close to my RPE limit, which is another thing we can add, the RPE stretching scale. So whenever I was doing my HEG split squats, I would rest for a week or something like that, and I was really pushing it, and I was becoming sore for many days. But this also meant that I was making quick progress, but at the same time, I was close to getting injured all the time. So this is also a way we can look at it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the best way to progress is staying in a safe. So this is it will be individual, you know, how hard you want to go and how hard you want to push. But for the long term, I really believe in trying to stay as have no soreness if possible, or at as little as possible, and be able to train with high frequency. That's what I found works best for me, instead of going very hard and having to rest for a long time, and actually also putting yourself jeopardizing yourself in other activities, right? Maybe we want to build a house, maybe we want to climb a tree, maybe we want to do something else in our free time, and now we're having a lot of DOMs and we are not having the capacity to live a full life outside of the gym as well. You know?
It depends on what. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's very
But
important.
I think it's an individual choice. There.
The details of the conversation are very important. Like if Casper's getting DOMs in his quad or his VMO, like that's very different to if the joint's swelling up and if the tendon's really sore, or if the quad tendon's sore, if the patella tendon's sore, or if the back hip flexor is actually getting really tight after the split squats, because it's really stretching that out, and then that's causing back pain off the back of the split squat. Like all the nuances of the conversation make a massive difference. If we're talking about muscle tissue and muscle DOMs, that's one conversation. If we're talking about tendon, that's another conversation. If we're talking about meniscus and stuff going on inside the joint, things moving around, and that's another conversation. So it's very important to distinguish like what kind of DOMs we're getting. Also, if it's bilateral, coming back to the pain conversation, if you're doing Jefferson curls and like both of your hamstrings and lower back are lit up, then that's very different to like there's one specific spot on one side that feels like it's not right. Or if you're doing, sissy squats and it feels fine on one leg, but the other leg is like, oh, there's a lot of quad tendon pain. Like that's something that you don't want to ignore if you're working with someone and they're like, yeah, it hurts in this specific spot on this side, versus if it's bilateral and it's just like general, this is really a lot of tension.
Yeah. So
yeah, definitely, it makes a big difference. And so when it's muscular, sorry, did I jump in when some? Okay, yeah,
No,
go ahead, Yanni. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. So what you're actually saying is that you are fine with not experiencing even the slightest of DOMs in the following days, as long as you.
Okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to touch on what Keegan was saying.
Maybe I have a delay.
Yeah, you're good, Giorgo. Maybe there is a little bit of a delay. Jump out and come back in again. But yeah, the idea that you need to have DOMs to make gains, I think, is overrated.
Yes, it's a bit of a delay, but I got your question. Yeah, so I'm definitely fine with it. I'm actually looking.
We'll see if he comes back in. If it jumps back up to speed, I think it's just getting behind. The idea that you don't need.
I want to add something here. In terms of understanding that if you want to live your daily life outside of training and not have DOMs all the time, I think that's a very important aspect. And one of the rookie mistakes that you can make when you get into long range training is pushing this too far. And I think you're able to push it this far if you actually also train the blood flow with the short range. But when you see people doing Jefferson curls and stuff like that, you don't think of, in the beginning when you're a rookie, you don't think of healing the adaptations or the structural damage afterwards. And that was one of the mistakes that I made in a long time in the beginning. So I was doing too much long range training, and getting that ratio correct is also very important.
yeah, maybe it just has become a big part of fitness culture that unless you get sore the following days, or if you feel like you haven't done enough, maybe you just uh, don't count the training at all. I see it all the time in my gym. People always come in and they're chasing this feeling of soreness immediately or the following days after, or they just feel like they haven't accomplished anything. But when you talk with Euros enough, or if you start to realize the value of proper tension, you just know that you can have the desired effects without even feeling sore. And yeah, that's something that should probably change all around the world. People should just learn how to create the best quality tension they can get without just sacrificing anything.
Yeah, it's a topic that we aren't discussing too much around the world. We are always focused on what goes on inside the training, but not too many people focus on what happens after the training. What's the sensations after the training? What's the body feeling like? So yeah, that's a really important topic.
It's very interesting to see how that's still a thing in the whole fitness world. As well in the climbing world, there's a lot of climbers that are super strong, but they have a lot of injuries because it's super tendon focused, and they don't really understand the whole concept of the tendon, the long range and the short range yet. And they just keep training. They get injuries, and then at the 26th, they're like retiring from competition climbing, which is crazy. They should be on their top of their game when they're.
You got a good point there, Eddie, but your sound is not good on the bike with your microphone in the wind. Yeah, there's other levels to this stuff where when you understand it, you can be much more intuitive about it because you know what the impact of the movement should be, and then you get the sensations after it. And so it does become a very personal journey. I think that this does, in a lot of ways, change the role of the coach when you understand this stuff. Like people are asking like how many sets and reps should I do and how long a range. Like you can't coach this stuff. Or you expect like face to face, you kind of can. But if you're giving someone a session on the computer for them to do, like they need to understand what is actually going on and to be able to. You can still do it, right? And as long as you're really conservative with everything, it'll be fine. But if you want maximum results, like the person needs to know what's going on, and they need to understand, okay, yeah, these stretching exercises are going to cause more soreness, and you need to listen to your body with the sensations that you're getting to know if you're going to be able to handle more load or not. Like I think the idea of really empowering the people on the other side is really important, and trying to move away from the like coach knows everything and athlete knows nothing. Like all coaches should be working towards that anyway, and working with pro athletes, like empowering them is definitely a key thing. Athletes understand this concept. Like it makes intuitive sense of like, okay, yeah, when there's a bit more stretch, there's going to be more damage. When there's less stretch, there's going to be less damage. It's like really intuitive, but coaches are actually the ones who are most resistant to understanding that this is a key concept. So yeah, what's going to come up after the training? Like often when you do dance and you're hitting like PBs each day and you're doing 10 sets at a decent load, you can get to the point where you're hardly feeling any DOMs. If you on the leg sessions, you're probably still going to feel it, like if you do 10 by 10 squats and such. But I just hit some good lifts 2 days ago on the upper body stuff, 10 singles on the bench, and like I did the 10 by 10 snatch and like feel 100% fresh. Like it's just nothing, and it is a good feeling. It's like, and you often feel like, oh, I could do a lot more. It's kind of tempting of like, well, I should probably do a lot more because I'm not even sore. But if you're getting stronger and you're not sore, like that's kind of the sweet spot, right? Like that's the dream, to be able to do other things as well.
Yeah, that's right. I completely agree. Sorry, guys, I have some connection issues here, but yeah, Giannis, I'm sure Keegan answered your question already, but from my point of view, you are not only okay with not being sore, that's what you're looking for. So you don't need to get sore to get. So I'm never sore. Yesterday I did 10 D3 with concentric pulses, and I did push-ups and I did pike push-ups as well. I did a lot of different stuff. I have no DOMS today, and that. And I'm seeing results. I'm seeing growth in muscles, even though I already have a lot of muscle mass. I'm still seeing growth in muscles. So it's not about getting DOMS. It's about doing the right things when we're training. And the thing when it comes to feeling like we're not doing enough, I would advise. So, for example, if we're doing the bench, instead of going, to the maximum amount we could do on the bench, to feel like we're doing something, do something else. Give another stimulus. You have still energy. Perhaps you have high energy levels, and you still have energy to do more. But your tissues will not be able to handle the more work if you're working in the same angles, the same exercise. So if you want to do more, put the tension in other parts that you can bring up and strengthen, and try to the DOMS definitely are not an indicator of how good the stimulus will be. Another thing I want to touch, because I had some you lost me there, or I lost you, was the other thing that Keegan mentioned, that it makes a big difference what kind of pain or what kind of DOMS we're having. So if it's muscular, it's always we can disregard it more. I would not disregard it completely, because I'm trying to not have muscle DOMS as well. But it will heal much faster, and it will probably not be a big issue if you're not going in and training again while you're having these DOMS and going hard again. When it comes to tendons, when it comes to ligaments, when it comes to cartilage, now we need to pay much more attention if we're having pain or DOMS there the days after. So that's something we need to pay much more attention to. And also the other thing that Keegan mentioned, that depending on if we're having if the DOMS we're having are very are the same from side to side, and are feeling the same from side to side. So we're having, so that is much more okay. That means that the body has the tension has been distributed correctly throughout the body, in an even way. But while if we're having some feeling pain in some, did I lose you guys?
We're still here.
I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So if we're feeling like Keegan said, if we're feeling it more in one hamstring than in the other, or in certain points, so what I would think, my thoughts would go to would be, there are two options really. They could be related. There could be that there is that is a weak point that we need to bring up. So it's a weak point in our tissues, which we need to take care of. Or it could be that we're having some, or a combination of the two, or that we're having some asymmetry from side to side when we're moving. So the tissues are being loaded differently. This is something that I have had experience from with scoliosis, which gave me some overuse in one side of the body. So would you agree there, Keegan, that is what's going on when you're having pain in one side or in a specific part of the tissues?
Yeah. Yeah, if you're getting stuff in a specific area, then it's good to know, and then you just figure out your strategy of whether, okay, it needs more work, I need to isolate it more, or if it's bilateral work, scaling back both sides can also help. Yeah, this concept has definitely helped me to get to my best levels. And the other thing to consider is like, it's not just about tissue health. It's also then the specificity of strength gains. And if you're strong in all the positions, then that's better for sport as well. Like, it's better to be strong with a super stretched out bicep as well as a short bicep. From a performance perspective, if you're throwing or if you're playing rugby and you might get caught in that position, or you might need to, execute a play, a tackle, in that stretched position, it's better if you're strong in that position. So it's not just injury prevention, it's not just muscle growth, it's actually performance as well.
Yeah, definitely. I see it as a spectrum. I see it, so rehabilitation and performance is just at the different scales of parts of this spectrum. So really, the same principles apply in rehabilitating and going into performance. And yeah, as you said, I think that. So I got this question a couple of days ago. About why should we train the short range if it will make our muscles shorter and make them shorter basically. So the answer there is that you want to be strong in all the range of motion you have. If you are not strong in part of it, then you have a weak link, and that will make the whole chain weaker. So even if you are not using that very short range in your sport per se, you might get into that position, and then it's good that you're strong there. But maybe it's not something that you usually get into. I see it as one chain. So if one link is weak, if one part of the range is weak, then that will make the whole range weaker as well. Because it's the same tissues that are working, just in different ranges, and we're building them up in different ranges. The other thing is that when it comes to short range, yes, the tissues will become shortened, but they will also become thicker. So we're also having some hypertrophy effects there. The only problem is that if we're not also doing the long range, which will make them longer, then we run into issues. The short range is, in my experience, so we're talking a lot of times we're talking about how the long range is creating a lot of hypertrophy, and that is absolutely true. The most of the hypertrophy is happening in the long range, and that is through the pathways we all understand, through breakdown of tissue, and then rebuilding that tissue stronger and thicker and longer. However, that is not the only way that tissue can be stimulated to grow. In the short ranges, we have the ability of doing very high repetitions, which will enable a lot of lactic acid excretion, which also leads to hypertrophy through having higher levels of hormones, and also turning on satellite cells to build more tissue. So the other thing is that it will allow us also to train a certain muscle more often. So if we're only training the long range, then we have to have breaks. We could probably, if we put down the intensity enough, we could train long range every day. If we put down the tension and in the long range enough.
That's the thing to know. That's the thing to consider.
But I think we will have much greater effects.
That's the thing to consider, is that you could do long range every day if you do it really light, and you can get muscle hypertrophy with short range if you do it with intensity. Like people say, I get big quads from step ups. So yeah, you're doing 5 sets of 20 with body weight. Like if you're doing 5 sets of 20 sissy squats with body weight, you'd get hypertrophy too. Like you'd tell yourself a new. But if you're squatting with that kind of load, like of course it's still tension. It's just it's relatively less. So if you do 3 sets of 5 with an extreme long range movement, like you can have a hypertrophy stimulus, you can tear tissues, where if you do 3 sets of 5 on step ups, you're not going to get so much, or even like with kickbacks or whatever it's going to be. So that's why it's important to understand the nuance. Otherwise, you end up with like kind of stupid, you end up with things that don't make any sense to you. But it's like, well, no, there's still tension. It's still volume. And pump is a huge factor. The best legs you'll ever see will be like the cyclists, the track cyclists, sprint cyclists. So they're getting massive pump training as well as super heavy leg presses and squats. And that's what gets those crazy results. I'd love to hear from guys who haven't spoken there. Trevor, I know you're really deep into this one. Kevin, I know you're really deep into this.
Yeah, I can jump in real quick. We were talking a little bit about like the hypertrophy work, which I think is huge. And I think one of the biggest things that, Georgios, you can comment on a little bit more is, like you guys were saying, training all the pathways in the shoulder and the hip, the ankles and wrists, as opposed to just getting hypertrophy work and maybe the hip flexor and back and the extension. Like getting hypertrophy work in the abductors, adduction, all that stuff as well. That's been huge for a lot of my CrossFit clients to, like you said, they have these weak links, and once they get a little bit stronger in those shorter ranges, the muscular endurance, gets higher efficiency, and then they have more structural balance, which that's how the pain kind of goes away as well.
Sorry, we're making coffee here in the background, so I'm trying to be a bit quiet. But yeah, the structural balance aspect of this. Structural balance.
Sorry, I'm having some connections issue here, Trevor.
Yeah, you were. There's about a 15-second lag there again, Giorgo. I don't know what's going on there, but it's not the best day in internet. We can maybe try Zoom next time if it's just a connection there. But Kevin, you wanted to talk about your rectus femoris and the issues you've had there around with the sprinting.
Yeah, so on our last call would have been the suggestion you made was the sissy squat and diagonal stretch. So diagonal stretch has gotten better, and sissy squat went from like body weight for like 2 sets times, twice a week for about 15, 20 reps, all good. Now it's up to like 20 kilos, and again about 3-4 sets, 15, 20 reps. It's gotten better, definitely, but the issue is when we were talking about the start of this call about pain, it's like, it's not, I'll get maybe muscle pain from that, okay, but I wouldn't get like the tendon or like, I don't know if you want to say connective tissue pain that when I go out for a run and then it comes to like push around 70%, 80% on a sprint, that's when I'll get that pain on the upper part of my rectus femoris. So I'm trying to think, is there a strength standard that I should be trying to hit prior to going out and then trying to get back into sprinting? Because it seems like, okay, hip flexion got there, 30 kilos for single leg, leg raise, then I'm doing the KOT sissy squats. I don't know where to go really.
There's still stuff missing there. The thing that just changed in what you said was upper rectus femoris, because I was assuming it was like a mid rectus femoris strain. Like you kind of see them more. How high are we talking about where the issue's been?
I'll just show you now. Look. So see here, if that little dot, no, maybe that's better.
Yeah. So you had looks like a full thickness tear, and it looks like it was up pretty high. It makes sense that thing's going to be a bit of a hassle to come back from. I had one of the players that I worked with in France, Remy Casti, who was actually our star French player. He did a rec fem tear doing some sprints in a training session. It was on my watch. It was my fault. Mid tear, and just had that like stumpy thing going on after it, but he was able to fully get over it, and he went and played in the Australian league after that, which is the best league in the world, like out of the French league, which no one ever really does, to get out of the French league into the Australian league. Like he's the only guy in a long time, and so you can overcome it. But yeah, yours up really high. I would say that like sprinting is going to be a significant part of the stimulus that you need to progress through. So I would treat that like your dense kind of work and go, 70% for 1000s, and then take your times. If you're getting it in 16 seconds or 17 seconds, do them on the minute, and then work your way down with that. Like I do think that specific stimulus is going to be important because sprinting is a really strong stimulus. In saying that, like the sissies and all that wouldn't be as valuable for that height as I was thinking. Like if it was more like lower quad, then I would be thinking that more. So with that position, it's really like some of the stuff that shows up in that Super Training by Mel Siff and Verkhoshansky. It's a funky book, but like everything that's ever been written in strength training is in that book somewhere. It's like 50 years old, and they already wrote everything basically, except maybe the long and short range. But they had a lot of that stuff in there. So I think stuff like rear foot elevated split squat, but you're actually putting all the emphasis on the rear foot. That kind of thing is like where I think you're actually getting the issue. And I'd be really curious of like how they feel if you're pushing into the back leg and even going further forward so that you've almost got that back leg like relatively straight. So it's like a rear leg elevated split squat ATG style, but I would elevate the back leg even further. You could do it with the knee on the bench as like a real hip isolation, but then I think what's going to make most difference is doing it with just like your toes on the bench or like half your foot on the bench and being a fair way further like forward with that front foot and then pushing into the bench, going up and down. It's not going to give you a lovely quantified number, but I think it is going to give you the stimulus that you want. You could probably somehow do it with a cable to get that sort of position, but there is a bunch of that sort of stuff. They do it in Super Training. They have like diagrams of like laying back on a table and lifting the foot up with a kettlebell kind of stuff. Like sort of, like how what's it called? The Thomas test, is it? The one where you test the hip flexor laying back on the table. So, but the bottom leg is weighted. And so that kind of position, I think, is going to give that specific upper quad hip flexor stimulus. Even getting good at back bridges will be nice. For opening up that hip really hard and going between sort of like sissy squat position to back bridge, those kind of games I think will be powerful stimulus for you. So yeah, send us some videos of what you're doing there in the athletic group, and let's continue the conversation around that. You don't have to leave it. Like last we spoke about it I was in Vanuatu, which means it was like 7 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago or something. Like keep us updated each week with what's going on. Otherwise, we think you're not being consistent, and then I don't want to work with you. If you're not consistent, like I don't give a shit. If you're actually working hard and you're serious about it, then tell us each week so we know what's going on.
Keegan, quick question about that. That's all work in that longer range, right? Is there any like specific stuff for working that shorter range that you can get, heavier stimulus with?
Yeah, you could do shorter range as well, but and it might help with the healing, but I don't think it's actually going to give that stimulus. Like he's pretty strong, and it's like that specific position is not tolerated, and it would be like that lengthened position and recovering the foot through, I think would be what's causing the challenge. So that's why I think that will be the money maker. Doing the other stuff for recovery and like checking all the other stuff would be good. The lying cable pull-ins, that kind of stuff too. But I don't think they'll make the difference, but they'll still you'd still do them. Yeah. All right, so we're going to jump into this. Giorgos back here. We've got 3 minutes left. We're going to jump into the league meeting, talking about June and going fully pro in this journey to life on our own terms. But any final comments, thoughts here, wrapping up the range training part 1? Giorgos gone out of the gym into his.
Sorry, I'm back. Sorry for all the issues. Now I'm up in the apartment, so hopefully it's better. Final thoughts. I would say. I don't really know. I lost so much, so I'm not really know. I don't really know what you were talking about lastly, but I would say the important things to take away from this conversation is find the range and the tension that is appropriate for your tissues at the time when you are doing the movement, and slowly increase those. When it comes to long range movements, start with going slow and controlled, and increase.
Your sound is gone, Yorgos.
It's not his day. Technology sometimes favors some more than others, or you have your days of great things and not so great things. But yeah, that was, I think it was a great conversation, and I appreciate everyone's contributions there. I think something that we need to continue to discuss. It's the concept that I value most in strength training. That's why I keep talking about it. But more than anything else, everything else will be fine if you understand this. Understand how much volume you do, which movements you do, everything fits within this. Once you have this framework, you really can't mess up strength training too much, and you can enjoy it a lot more, and you get a lot more gains, and you get a lot less injuries. So it's a fun lens to look at training through, and I'm excited to continue this conversation. We will make sure we get the internet quality up to speed, but let's jump into the league meeting for June and talk about the one thing for the month and the idea of going pro. Let's do that from the Zoom call, because I think we're going to have maybe a few more. If you guys come over, then we're going to have a few more. Those who are on the YouTube as well, welcome to jump into that. I will post the link again in the connected group, but you should have got an email about it. Did everyone get that email? Let me end this broadcast.